Hey, everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international war-winning author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is an illusion and those you love will be the first to go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews, and Eve Levin enjoys by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today. 4 Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com on over 40 podcast platforms and over 110 countries, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also, Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, Apple Music, and now heard on HamiltonRadio.net, Diamonds FM, Oldies Radio, and coming soon to a network near you. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. And for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com and check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. T-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies, and baseball gear. Makes great gifts 24/7. Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles. Also, make sure you check out the cool merchandise section for t-shirts, pop sockets, hoodies, and also phone cases and more. Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. Check it out today. I'll support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, themikewagnershow.com, and you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/the Mike Wagner Show. Make sure you do so today. We're here with a terrific gentleman who is a son of a Syrian immigrant. He served as senior executive with E.F. Hutton, Lehman Brothers, Furman Salz, and other financial institutions, transforming fledgling operations into profitability machines. We'll talk about that. He was also co-chairman and CEO in similar positions with ING and Barings, also America's Region, ING Altus Group, ING Furman Salz Asset Management, MCH Capital, Diker Management, and more. He also served in the Navy and graduated from Harvard Business School. And he also explains why everyone should not go to college. We're going to talk more about that. He also received the Horatio Algier Award back in 2015. And the new book, On the Road Less Traveled, An Unlikely Journey from Orphanage to Burden, is an improbable story about how he bounced around from foster home to more. And of course, he talks about an amazing adventure, going to CEO and more. Live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plus Studios, from the beautiful Florida Keys, the author of On the Road Less Travel, An Unlikely Journey from the Orphanage to the boardroom and into the Plus Studio, ladies and gentlemen, the very multi-talented author and co-chairman, CEO, and senior executive, Ed Hajim. Ed, good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Mike, thank you very much. That's the fastest introduction I've ever had.
There'll be a quiz after this. So.
All right. Okay. I'm waiting.
Well, we get you prepared for that. And you've been prepared for a long time. We'll talk about that. You're the son of a Syrian immigrant. You served as senior executive with E.F. Hutton, Lehman Brothers, Furman Salz, and more. And you also were co-chairman and CEO with various positions and served in the Navy, graduated from Harvard Business School, and explains why everyone should not go to college. And your new book is an improbable story of how he bounced from a foster home to orphanages, living a daily struggle until he realized the American dream. And that's what we really need to hear, the American dream. And before we talk about the American dream and the new book, Ed, tell us how you first got started.
Pardon?
Tell us how you first got started.
First got started, well, it started way back, when I was born, 1936. My mother and father got divorced when I was 3 years old. And mom got custody of me, and she took me from Los Angeles to St. Louis, where her family was. We were not welcome there because in 1939, nobody was welcome. Nobody needed two new mouths to feed. My father got $5 a month support and visiting rights on Sundays. So he drove 1,800 miles to visit me a couple months after I left, picked me up in St. Louis, found me what he said was unkept, decided instead of taking me to a movie or to the park, he'd got on Highway 66, which is the front of the book. We drove back to Los Angeles. He told my mother not to look for us, and he told me that she died. And I lived with that fact for a long time. In fact, for 57 years, I thought she'd passed away. And being 3 years old, what did I know? That started a 15-year period of Dad and I living together. Basically, for a couple of years, we lived together. He was a merchant marine, so he was always at sea. First couple of years, I lived with a neighbor lady most of the time. When the war started, I ended up going to 5 different foster homes. And then I flew back east. We spent a year together. Unfortunately, he had to go back to sea again. I ended up in 2 orphanages. The second orphanage was 5 blocks from an excellent high school. And at the end of that period, I got a naval scholarship, an NROTC scholarship, which was my ticket out of my problem. But it was a pretty horrendous 18 first years. And so when I was 18 years old and graduated from high school, I decided I would bury my background. I was going to go to college, and I was not going to tell anybody where I came from. We lived in a post office box in San Francisco. My mother died when I was 3 years old. That was the end of the story. A little bit of denial didn't hurt. I didn't have to spend time discussing with people what background which I was embarrassed about. And in those days, poor kids didn't go to private colleges. You know, they didn't. And so I was kind of one of a kind. Had the wrong haircut, the wrong clothes, and had a pretty bumpy first year. But adjusted, adapted, and then I flourished. College turned out to be a real challenge and a real wonderful experience for me. And I did very well, graduated with a degree in chemical engineering and commissioned in the United States Navy. Should stop there and get some of your questions, but that's the story. It's, you know, in many respects, what I'm so proud of is, and what I'm trying to get across to young people is the American dream is alive and well. You know, the end of the story was that when I took over as the chairman of the board of the University of Rochester, which is a $3 billion, $4 billion operation with 30,000 employees, you know, I was able to give the largest gift in its 150-year history. So from starting with really absolutely nothing, I had, my father was my only relative. I had no siblings, no aunts, no uncles. I graduated when I graduated from public school, you know, grammar school, high school, college, graduate school. Nobody came to any of my graduations. But with America behind me and a lot of luck and a good period of history, I was able to do quite a bit. And I want to convince people that almost anything is possible.
And of course, certainly as well too. And I'll talk about your American dream and in just a minute as well too. You've been in chemical engineering for quite some time, and you know, tell us about the transition. You're going from chemical engineering. You also you know, took up transforming fledgling operations into profitability machines like Ed Hajim, Lehman Brothers, and more. And
well, you know, I was also
story.
I loved engineering, and I loved the. I was at Hercules Powder Company working on the new technology at the time. 1964, the new technology was something called plastics. I was in plastics before Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman came 5 years later. You know,
thank you, Dustin Hoffman.
I went into plastics, and I loved it, but I was going to Wharton School at night in business, and the Wharton professor and a friend of mine at the Harvard Business School convinced me that I should go to school full time. Well, I didn't have the money, I didn't have the grades, but somehow I got in. So in that September, I got in my car with $5,000 in my pocket, which was exactly the amount for first year tuition. Went up there, checked in, and said, "Gentlemen, I have money for tuition, but nothing else." And they said, "Okay, we'll lend you the money." But it changed my life. It was a terrific experience. I got a chance to compete, as I called it, with 90 other men every day, 3 times a day, with mouth-to-mouth competition, mouth-to-mouth combat. And at the end of the period of time, I was going to go back into engineering. But I all of a sudden took a couple of interviews with financial companies, and it seemed like, although chemicals seemed interesting, the financial business seemed like it was the beginning of the birth of a major industry. People don't realize in 1964, Wall Street was a tiny place. I mean, people like Lehman Brothers and Goldman Sachs, they took 2 people per year. Now they, you know, take hundreds of people per year. And I went to a company in California called Capital Research and Management. They took only 2 graduates, 2 total. I was 2 of us, brand new. Only 15 people in the whole company, and they had 300 million in assets under management. It was a mutual fund company, and it was the second largest mutual fund company in the country. Today, that same company has $2 trillion, and when I was there, it had 350 million. So that was an industry beginning. It was the birth of an industry, and finance really fascinated me because it gave me a chance to be really free. You know, being an engineer, you're kind of stuck in a laboratory, or you're stuck at a plant. I had two possibilities, one being a plant manager or being a research analyst. But on Wall Street, you could get on your plane, fly to someplace, talk to people, figure out whether it was an interesting deal, bring it back, talk to your partners, make investments. And I really liked that. I also found that on both sides of my experience, I had really bright, interesting people at the time. My customers were very smart and my partners were very smart. And I just had a good time. I mean, I found my passion. And my passion was basically not necessarily finance, but my passion was putting people together to solve a problem, create a product, or make a decision. And I really love that. I love that. And in the finance world, you're doing that. You have all these little modules. These guys are doing bonds, and these guys are doing stocks. These guys are investment bankers. These guys are, they're working in the back office. You have little groups of people trying to accomplish certain things. And I got a kick out of putting them together and seeing them operate. And I love to see people do better than they thought they could. My real passion was helping someone say, I'd say, what do you want to do? And he'd say, I want to do this. I want to see you do better than you think you can. That really turned me on. And so that basically was one of my secrets to management. But I had a lot of fun with that. But that's why I changed, though. It also turned out to be very lucrative. Wall Street turned out to be a good place, and chemicals was not so great over those, following 40 years. So I was lucky to pick the right place.
It sounds like not even Dustin Hoffman could save the plastics industry.
Right. Dustin Hoffman and I were born in the same hospital in Los Angeles.
Oh my gosh. It's like,
I met him about 20 years later, and I was sitting at a party talking to him, not knowing who he was. He didn't know who I was. And he turns out to be a year younger, and he was a little bit heavier than I was, but not much. Great fellow.
Oh my gosh. It's like, what are the odds of meeting the same person in the same hospital? Even it's like the same year earlier, year later. It's like, what are the odds? It's like, I cannot imagine that. I think you got me thinking on, who was born in the hospital I was, although it's no longer there. It's like, I challenge everybody to do that. That'd be a new challenge.
I'm not even sure that's true, but it seemed like it was true because I remember we shared it. And we seemed like we've been to the same place at the same time. But it was in Los Angeles. But I loved plastics. I loved the whole industry. I was an applications research engineer, so I'd have salesmen would call me and say, "We got to make this plastic whiter, or we got to make it tougher." And I would go back to the laboratory with my guys, and we'd sit around and do it. Next morning, we'd call them and say, "Do this," because it was really the beginning of things like polypropylene and polyethylene, and they weren't on the market. They're being tested for things like ropes and bottles and things like that. So it was really fun. I was there at the beginning, but I found finance much better, more free, more interesting, and the companies were much more open. They were smaller also. Hercules at the time, like DuPont, was a very large company, and Capital Research was 15 people, and so it was fun.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds fun as well, too. We'll talk more about your financial experience as well, too, translating into your book, On the Road Less Travel. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is an illusion and those you love will be the first to go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews and even loved and endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today. 4 Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, check out the MikeWagnerShow.com and over 40 podcast platforms and heard in over 110 countries. Take us with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. For great gift ideas and more, go to Amazon.com and check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books, merchandising, and more. Also support us on Anchor FM, PayPal, the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com at the Mike Wagner Show. Make sure you do so today. We're here with the amazing author and former senior executive, CEO, chairman of various companies, Ed Hajim of On the Road Less Traveled, here on the Mike Wagner Show. And we're talking finances and everything else. You've been with E.F. Hutton, Lehman Brothers, Furman Sots and other financial institutions. You also been in some mergers as well too, and maybe tell us about the biggest mergers and what was the most interesting merger you've ever been involved in.
Well, the most interesting one is when I saw we we started working on the company. I left Lehman Brothers in 1983, became the CEO of Furman Cells, which was an unknown small little firm. I gave up my office overlooking the Statue of Liberty and the harbor. I gave up the dining room, where fanciest dining room on Wall Street, for Furman Cells, where the dining room was two hot plates in the conference room, and my office looked over the wall of the next building. And we started with about $20 million worth of revenues, and after 5 years, we got it up to 85 million. And it was the beginning of it was late in 1987, and along came Xerox and said they wanted to buy us. And
wow, copycats? You mean copycats?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so they were on a binge of buying financial firms, and so they bought us. They bought us on October the 1st, 1987. And for those who people remember, 3 weeks later the market crashed completely, and we couldn't have been bought. We spent 5 years with Xerox, and they decided they didn't want to be in that business, and we bought the company back. And that, of course, another exciting, what you want to call a merger, but we bought the company back, and all the employees became stockholders. And in 5 years, we grew the company again to almost 500 million in sales from 20 million originally. And we sold the company to ING, a large Dutch bank. And that was the most exciting merger I ever been involved with. We sold the whole company for cash, $600 million. And, it was a closure for my business career, and obviously did very well for all my stockholders. I had 200 stockholders. So those were the two really interesting things. We sold the company, bought it back, and sold it again. And unfortunately, it didn't work out so well because ING really didn't know how to handle a U.S. investment bank, and slowly but surely the thing went away. But I worked for ING for 4 years. And at the end of my career with them, I was managing $60 billion because they had bought a lot of companies with money management capabilities. And so I ended up being the CEO of a $60 billion money management company. And then I left them in 2002 and formed my own hedge fund, which was not a merger, and went on, for there. Eventually started to focus more on philanthropy. That's how I got involved in the University of Rochester and being their chairman.
That is so
interesting. The biggest merger was obviously me selling my company. It really did bring closure to my whole life.
Mm-hmm. I love hearing a story about University of Rochester, given that, and you can just give us a little background on that. That sounds really interesting.
Well, I was trustee for 20 years, and then we were going to get a new president. So I helped get the new president. I was ready to leave. 20 years was enough. And he invited me to dinner, and he said, "I want you to be the chairman of the board." And I said, "No, I'm 72 years old. I'll do whatever I can for you, but you should get somebody who basically lives in Rochester, is younger, and also the guy who was the chairman was a super guy, my fraternity brother. I said, keep old Bob. He's much better than I am." And he convinced me to do it. And we went on an 8-year run. He was spectacular. I mean, he could do things that I think very few presidents of universities could do. We started the first comprehensive capital campaign in the history of the school since it was first started by George Eastman. And we raised more money during that 8-year period than they raised cumulatively in the 150-year period of the school. We raised $1.3 billion. And we added more than $250 million to scholarships. We put $900 million worth of new concrete on the ground, including the largest project ever, which was a $140 million children's hospital. And it was a great experience, and it really worked out extremely well. They were very, very kind to me. They named the engineering and applied science school after me. They built a quadrangle with all the engineering disciplines in one place, and they called it the Ed Hajim quadrangle. And then, of course, now I'm the first person in my neighborhood to have a statue. They put a statue of me on the quadrangle. And I'm standing there like this, 8 foot of bronze, So I am the first one in my neighborhood, and I'm a little bit embarrassed by it, but it is kind of humorous. It was very nice of the president to do that for me. So it was a great experience, and I got much more credit than I should have gotten. He did a great job. I mean, we had US Air as one of the airlines that serviced Rochester. I think he had more miles on that plane than anybody else in the Western world. He probably had more waiting hours when they were late and delayed than anybody else too. He did a great job of really bringing in money, but he also did a great job of changing the school. I mean, we had a record level of SAT scores, record level of new applications, record level of early decisions. It really he changed the school. He made an inflection point in the school, and he really pulled it off. And really reshaped the campus. And it was a great experience for me because it was totally different than my financial experience. When you build businesses, you add certain kinds of people. When you're building an E.E. Mawson area or a nonprofit institution, you got to have very different kind of people. Here's a lot of decision making. Here's a lot of consensus building. There are very different attitudes, very different experiences, and it was great for me because I had to adjust and it was a real challenge for me to take on something also as large as that. I mean, I always been much more of an entrepreneur. Even Furman Cells with 800 people and $500 million worth of revenues was still a small firm. This was a big organization. It had 30,000 employees, 10,000 students, and the budget was a scary one. So, but it was an interesting challenge, and we did a good job. I mean, a lot of help. I mean, there were a lot of very good people there, and the school was ready for a conferences capital campaign. We really wanted to engage the alumni, and we did. And they came forward. The board was extremely supportive, and so it worked. It was one of these, I've been very lucky in that I've gone from one thing to the next. And, in my book, I even talk about this golf course, which I founded, it's been luck for me. I mean, I always find something, what's next to do? People say to me, what's next for you now, Ed? I said, maybe it's this book that I'm written.
Speaking of golf, and you had a golf course built as well too, or you helped build and everything like that. What's your golf game? I was going to ask you.
Well, my golf game, unfortunately, when I was very young, I played very little golf. At high school and college, I played baseball and basketball, and I took a little bit of golf up when I first got married. But when this third child was born, I was told, Dad, you got to play tennis. So I gave up golf until I was 55 years old. But I love it. And when I went to Nantucket, I was pretty well known by people, and they had one really good golf course on Nantucket. And, I applied for it, and a fellow recommended me, was a well-known person and so forth, but I didn't get in. So, they told me that I was not going to get in. So I decided, instead of, being a victim and fighting him and, I decided to build my own golf course. And so, it worked out so well. We built the Nantucket golf course. It was sold out completely. I sold every membership before we moved to Shovel of Dirt. And when we built it, it turned out, Reese Jones built it, fabulous designer, turned out to be the #1 private course built in 1998.
Wow.
And our clubhouse won the #1 award for clubhouses that year, 2 years later. So that turned out really well. And along with having a statue, which I think is crazy, but wonderful, the biggest thrill you have in your life, if you're a golfer, is after 9 holes, you walk up to the snack bar, and the little girl, Kelly, says to you, what's your number? You say, #1.
Oh my gosh, I can remember that. I think I tried to play 9 holes one point, and it's like the best shot I had was like I got so frustrated, like on Caddyshack, how the guy got really frustrated, like hit so hard or something. I dug out of a sand trap, one of a couple of sand traps, went over a hill and up the cup, and just like went in. It's like, how the hell he did that? And I said, I was pissed. I was trying to get something.
No, but I've been a reasonable golfer. I've had 15 handicap, things like that. But as I get older now, I'm starting to lose it a little bit. The distance is slowing down, but I still love it. In fact, I had my first hole-in-one this year.
Congratulations.
I played golf now for 30 years, since age 55, 30 years. Never had a hole-in-one. I had one this year. I think I may be the oldest guy to have a hole-in-one.
Well, I am up to the challenge, and I'm sure you had a lot of challenges. And you also mentioned as well too that skill is important, but luck is essential. And we're not talking golf here, by the way, too. So
no, luck is important. You got to be lucky to be born at the right time, and I was born at the right time. This particular 40-year period we've just lived through is one of the great periods in American history. If you just look at the difference being born in 1900, those 70 years had everything, except for you had a few years in the 20s, which were reasonable. The other years were not terrific. But if you're born in 1936, as I was, and had your most productive years were in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, you were very lucky. And of course, being born in America, that's another thing. And I've just been a very lucky person. And I always say, if you want, why are you so lucky? Well, when my wife goes to the grocery store, she always takes me with her. You know why? Because I can find a parking place when she can't.
I like that. Here, I'll give you this if you let me have a parking spot. I can imagine that.
That's right. No, I mean, but luck is important. You got to have a little bit of luck, but it is, the harder you work, the luckier you get. There's no two ways about that. And the old cliche that says, first you take a chance and then luck arrives,
Hmm.
but you got to take a chance. You got to go out there and stretch yourself and go out, take a shot, and then hopefully you get luck as well.
Hmm. And of course, too, you also have to go back to childhood as well, too. That many of us have a childhood, but what was the strongest lesson that you learned during your childhood?
Well, my childhood looks pretty terrible. Orphanages and foster homes. Some of the foster homes were very, they were not, they were awful. They were basically destructive and so forth. But when you go through that period, you end up gaining some advantages from those disadvantages. For example, if you, first of all, get self-reliance. If you're all alone, you learn to rely on yourself, and you build into your inner voice a conversation that says, Ed, you can do it, because you've done it. But also adaptability. Think about moving from 15 or 20 different places in your first 18 years. You go from one schoolyard to the next to the next. You learn how to adapt to that society, whatever it might be. When you go from one orphanage to the next, there's a rites of passage. You got to pay attention to how you integrate yourself. So that translates later on when you go from one company to the next, which I did. When I go from E.F. Hutton to Lehman Brothers, I recognize there's a different culture, and I got to figure out what the culture is, how to fit in, how to be successful, and so on. So these disadvantages that I had, a lot of them became advantages over time. And in fact, people say to me, well, I grew up in, like my children did, in a fine community, and they don't have this kind of disadvantage. How do I do it? I said, get them out on their own. Send them out on a Knowles trip, National Outdoor Leadership, or send them out outward bound, or get them a job in a hospital. Teach them, have them do something by themselves. My daughter drove an ice cream truck one summer. Tell you, that teaches you a lot about society, because you can't go back the next day with any ice cream in that truck, or the guy takes it away from you. So you learn how to sell that ice cream that day. So this is the whole process. And those things in my childhood, I must admit, I learned. You also get some negatives. There's no two ways about it. I was an angry young man, because when you go through a background like mine, you always ask, why me? And it burns inside of you. And there again, what you have to do is, instead of taking anger and putting it outside at other people and other things, take it inside and drive you to do better. Those are the kind of tricks I want to pass on to young people, saying, if you're angry, it's fine. That's okay, be angry. But take that anger and use that energy to drive yourself forward. Don't take it out externally. That's one of the problems that many people have. And there's a big message. Try never to be a victim.
Hmm.
And if you're a victim, you use enormous energy fighting something. You have to use that energy to figure out what's next and go on. What's next not as easy either. So using the energy to go forward, you'll make it. And if you say to yourself, hey, it's over. Lehman Brothers, I spent 7 years there. Read the book. I did almost everything right. I turned around 2 major divisions. The group raised $7.5 billion in 2.5 years, and I got basically thrown out. I could afford it, but what I do, I found my dream job, which was the next job, and I went on. I remember going to the boss, who I fought with for 7 years. I said, Lou, I learned a little, and I earned a little, and I learned a little, and I'm out of here. And that was it. And I went on to the next thing. I think that's really what you have to do in life. You just, and that's why I say that in college, go there and try things, because success in life is being able to fall down and get up. That's a cliche, but it's true. And in college, you can reach and stretch and fail. Early failure is a gift. And again, that's in my book. I failed pretty miserably in my 30s, and I learned an awful lot from it. So,
And of course, I gotta say this, is that you're pretty much a hero yourself. And back in the day, young people, had some heroes, but it seems like it's lacking. Why is it essential for young people to have heroes?
why is it
Or
essential for
need
young
them, I
people
should say, yes.
to have what?
Why do you believe young people need heroes? It's like, young people aren't there in search
Well,
of a hero.
I'm strong on that too. I think that it's easier to. I don't like heroes as individuals. I like traits. Let me just say, one of my heroes is Winston Churchill. I love his persistence, but I don't want his drinking habits. I think Steve Jobs is the most creative man maybe that ever lived. He and Leonardo da Vinci. But I sure as heck wouldn't want his personality. So I want young people to take traits that they want to, and it's easier to see a trait and copy it, or at least try to make it like that, than take a whole person. The whole
Good
person,
point.
we're all packages, and it's hard to take here and say. But we had some heroes. I mean, when he went to the movies on Saturday, John Wayne was a hero because he did the right thing and he always won. So did Jimmy Stewart. So there were, and for a young person, very young person, young like I was in 5, 6, 7, 10 years old, that it'll help you saying, if I do the right thing, I will succeed. But later on, it's more, if you want heroes or mentors, take their traits and use those traits. Don't try to take the whole person, because, all of us are vulnerable. All of us are packages. We all have weaknesses.
Hmm. And certainly do so as well too. And of course, just a couple of things before you talk about your book. You talk about going to Navy, go to graduate school, and you also talk about something about getting a trade, which is lacking these days. Which do you think you would recommend, like going
Oh,
to the?
I'm a nutcase on the service. And that service changed my life. And if you read Hillbilly Elegy, you'll see that he also's life was changed by going to the Marines. In the case of being a naval officer, couldn't have a better experience. Here you are, 22 years old. You go aboard ship. Captain takes you, introduces you to your division, 180 men, 360 eyes look at you. You're now 24/7. You have to be an example. You've got to be a model. You learn from the 55-year-olds and you help to teach the 18-year-olds, but it's really a system. Also, I remember very specifically, one of the old timers said to me, Ed, we'll give you 6 months. So in 6 months, I learned everything I could about that ship and proved to those people that I was good enough to be their boss. And that was important. I also learned discipline. In the Navy, there are rules you must follow. All right. And that was a very healthy experience. There's certain ways you have to look. And that was very important to me too. So the Navy taught me, it was almost an invaluable experience. And when I left, I learned everything there was to learn. I learned how to take the ship in and out of port. And the fact is, I got what they call a command duty officer's rating, which means when the captain went ashore at age 24, that last year I was aboard ship, when he went ashore, 1 out of 4 nights, I was the captain. So that was, that was a great, great experience. But in today's world, I think that there's no longer the service requirement. I mean, I had to either go become an officer or become an enlisted man. The draft was on. I guess if I had all my power, I'd probably put the draft back in, or put back in some kind of service to our country. I think it's very important that early in your life, you give back to the country, and therefore you become patriotic. I will never give up. I mean, I was in the service. I was 4 years in college as a midshipman, 3 years active duties, and 6 years inactive duty. I was in the service for 13 years essentially. Wow. So but it was a very good experience all the way through, wearing a uniform, looking sharp and so on and so forth. Today, I think that we need a great increase in vocational education. I'm a big sponsor of both the Upper Keys Community College here in Key Largo. I'm also, our golf course gives out 7 vocational scholarships a year. If a kid wants to be, a young man or a young woman wants to be a shift, let him be a shift. But today, going to a chef school costs you $40,000 a year. So we give scholarships for that. Our golf course in Nantucket gives 7 vocational scholarships. 5, 6 years ago, we went to the principal of the local high school. He thanked us because we gave 2 academic scholarships a year for 10 years. He said, but half the kids here don't go to college. Whoops. Okay. There's a real need. So we started giving these vocational scholarships. And I've written a couple articles on this, which nobody wants to publish, but it's harder to get an appointment with your electrician than it is your doctor. And
that ain't that the truth, I'll tell you that.
No. The guy who helps with our computers today canceled because he was too busy. He couldn't come and see us. My wife has some problems with a computer, but the doctor, I call him up, he answers the phone right away. So, it's no, I'm being facetious, but you look at what's happening down in the Upper Keys College, community college here in Key Largo, training nurses, which we're in desperate need of, and so training first responders, training hospitality people. These are all needs, and basically, people find your passion. You don't necessarily have to go to college. You go to a school where you learn something that you're really excited about. And and when I was a youngster, there were two tracks. There was an academic track and a commercial track. And today, if you're an electrician or a carpenter, you can make a very, very good living and live happily ever after, basically doing what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really good point too. We'll talk about the passion and the other piece as well too in the book, On the Road Less Travel with Ed Hajim. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Also brought to you by our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international war-ring author Mia Molson's The Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. We'll be back with author Ed Hajim of On the Road Less Travel, an unlikely journey from the orphanage to the boardroom after this time out. We're back with author Ed Hajim here on the Mike Wagner Show of On the Road Less Travel, an unlikely journey from the orphanage to the boardroom. And you just gave a great story on your journey and your new book, of course, an improbable story about how you bounced from the foster homes to orphanages, living a daily struggle and realizing the American dream. You're living the American dream according to the book. It's amazing. And of course, you talk about the 4 P's. You covered passion and what was some other P's you also covered?
Well, to me, that's the conversation you have with yourself. Basically the only constant you have in your life, even more than your parents, is your inner voice. You talk to it all the time. And I want to develop a language for that inner voice. And so I found these 4 P's, which I thought was very important. Find your passions, find your principles, find your partners, and find your plans. Find your passions, we've kind of talked about. It's an overused word. It is a combination of your talents, your likes, your dislikes. But find things that get you excited. It gets you up early in the morning, makes you climb 2 stairs at a time. If you love your work, you'll never work. And so you find that action. When I was in high school, math, science, baseball, basketball, girls, those were my passions. College, they rolled over. Baseball and basketball after my freshman year, went into intramural sports and extracurricular activities. Very important. But math and science went into engineering after a short experience with physics, which I didn't find too simple. So I stayed in engineering. And those are the kinds of things. And I tell people your passions will change over time. And actually, at college, I found my passion. My junior year, I started a humor magazine. I collected 30 people, put them together. Everybody was against it. The president was against it. The provost was against it. The librarian was against it. But I created this humor magazine, and I found that was my passion. Putting people together to solve a problem, create a product, start a program. That's what really excited me. And inside that, I really got a kick out of having people exceed their own expectations. And that helped me in business. So that was my passion. Find your principles. I went early, was the golden rule taught by the nuns with the golden ruler at the Catholic Church. They didn't mess around. And all through my life, I collected, find the rules you want to live by. Find those lines you won't cross early in your life, because it'll get a little foggy as you get older. The moral decisions, those lines become much more difficult. Early in your life, try to nail them down. I had things on my wall. Every time I find a principle that I want to follow, put it on my wall. One that really helped me early in my life was you could accomplish almost anything if you don't care who gets the credit. And then later on in my life, I went one step further. I started deflecting credit. I realized whenever you were given credit, there's always somebody else that deserves at least as much or more. Yeah, I got a great deal of credit from the University of Rochester, but the guy who did the job basically was the president. I had a great financial career, but I had a partner who was off the charts. He was 6'5". He did everything that I didn't want to do. I always wanted 3 kinds of partners: partners that can do things that you can't do, partners that can do things better than you can do, and then the most important partner is the partner who does things that you do well, but you don't want to do. You get those 3 kind of partners, you're home free.
Oh my gosh.
Now get the partners after principles. First of all, find someone to love. Find someone you can share your life with, someone who will truly support you and you can support. And I found that woman. She found me, married for 56 years, and I love her more now than more now I love her more than yesterday and less than tomorrow. She just is very special, and I wouldn't be here without her because she's helped me make decisions all my life. She's been my rock. But I found if you read my book, you'll find out when I had good partners, I succeeded. When I had bad partners or no partners, I failed. And finally, plans. I have to go back to it. I was having a discussion with a bunch of college students, and one guy said, "Ed, you got too many ideas. Give me one idea that I should do." I said, "Sit down and write down your plan. Write down what you want to do and how you think you might get there. And while you're doing it, think about your lifetime and see if you can find a trend or a cycle or a wave that you can catch." If you read all the successful biographies of successful people, most of them, if not all of them, spent a little bit of their time during their life with the winds at their back. Find a wind at your back. 1983, I leave Lehman Brothers and I go to Furman Cells. All right. And over the next 15 years, we grow the thing 20 times, from 20 million to 500 million. Okay. About 480 million, that exact. And, and everybody said it was great. I bought it and sold it again. Oh, you're great. On the other hand, during that period, the stock market went up 10 times.
Oh my
I had the
gosh.
wind at my back, you see? And that's just a sort of a financial example. Let me give you another example. An acquaintance, a friend, is a surgeon. He looks at the world. He says, what the world really needs especially in Africa, is a spinal surgeon. There's a lot of curvature of spine. People who have that kind of problem in Africa. He goes to Ethiopia. He goes to Mary Teresa's clinic. He starts that. Today, he's one of the most successful surgeons in Africa, and he has so many smiling faces in his brochure because he saved lives. That was a huge unsatisfied demand, which he saw. So I recommend, I ask people to basically look for those waves or those cycles and try to get on them. And there's so many of them today. AI, digitization, nanoscience, neuroscience. There's so many places you can get on those waves. You got to find the right one that marries your passions and your principles. And if you get all the 4 P's right, you end up with the 5th P, which is not in my book or not at the end of my book. It's you find your purpose. But it is difficult. It is difficult because it's a balancing act. And if you pardon me, if I could go on, life is in 4 parts. It's self, family, work, and community, which is giving back. And by definition, to be successful in any one of those areas, you got to focus. And as soon as you focus on one area, it's less focus on the other areas. So it's a juggling act. So if you're focusing on yourself, as most young people do early in life, family kind of goes up in the air. That's when teenagers get rid of their parents, all right? If you're focusing on your work, sometimes your family will suffer. Your wife will say, wait a second, you're not spending enough time on me. And then, of course, if you really focus, as I did in my latter part of my life, on community, giving back, you can't spend any time on your work experience because work it has to be focused or else you don't succeed. So it's a juggling act. So you take those 4 P's, which I call the pitchers of life, and these 4 parts of life, which I call the buckets. You pour the pitchers into the buckets, and hopefully that'll help you. But life is not simple. It's very complicated. By definition, if you think about it, anything you focus on takes energy away from another area. That's why a lot of people, I recommend you leave philanthropy or giving back to a little later part of your life, because self, family, and work are pretty hard to balance.
That is very true. And it made me think of a quote from a movie I took to family. It's a little cartoon called Robot. And I think that Robot said, who was it, Robin Williams? Or no, it was Mel Brooks, that Mr. Big or something. He said, see a need, feel a need. It may seem, rather trite, but that's actually true. I think of it, see a need, feel a need. Yeah, I also see that too. And also, just the last thing about your book, On the Road Less Travel and Unlikely Journey from the Orphanage to the Boardroom. And of course, you always, drill people on, what inspires you, what drives you, and everything else. And, oh yeah, that's good. Also good idea to, put that up, On the Road Less Travel with author Ed Hajim. And of course, what was your purpose and what was your reason to write the book? Let's hear your purpose and why.
Well, I buried my background when I was 18, went to college, told nobody about my background. When I was about 75, my wife, my daughter, and the University of Rochester got on my back. So we really want you to put down your life. And my wife knew most of my life, so did my daughter. And she said, we really have to have a record. So I decided I would do it. And once I got the first galley done, I sent it out to 15 people, most of which are on the back of the book, the blurbs. And they all said, no, you can't just give this to your family. You got to take it to a wider audience. But all my life, I've lived under the mantra, to live happy is to live hidden. I didn't like talking to guys like you. I didn't talk to television. People would call me up when I was in the financial business, be on CNBC. I said, no, I'm not interested. I don't want to do that because it's too much energy, so forth. Going out in the open was kind of scary for me, but people kept encouraging me. And now that I'm into it a year and we've sold 10,000 copies, and I have almost 10 universities now that have used it, I think it's been very satisfying. And what, the characteristic of me is what's next. And it looks like this book and I have 2 more manuscripts, which I guess maybe it'll last me a few more years. And so I'm going to decide to keep this book thing going. And I meet a lot of interesting people, Mike, including people like you. I've had so much fun with this. You're a whole different group of cats, and I never came in contact with you because I really stayed out of the public eye. And I'm meeting just a lot of fun. Not only the Mike show, I got Lauren in the desert, and there's a gal out in California on the bench, and one person on the couch, and so forth. It's really kind of fun, and they're all really interesting people. Good questions like tonight's questions. So I'm having some fun with that. The reason I wrote the book, and it looked to me like the next thing to do, and so far so good.
And of course,
young people.
And of course, you also asked about what's next. I think you read my mind on that. Like, what's next for you, Ed? 2022 and beyond. What's next?
It's the book, and see what my second book is going to be on the 4 P's, and it sounds corny, but the book is an allegory, and it could be it could be the first a video game that nobody gets shot.
Hmm. Oh, that'd be fun.
So, and I have a third book, which is going to be lessons. And I want to take out of this book and really drag the lessons out and put them in very concise form and see if I can, zero in on them. I really want to find out what drove me, where I can pass it on to young people. I'm getting feedback. I got a letter the other day that just took care of everything. This woman's mother, this gal's mother, wrote me a letter and said, my daughter was not going to go to college, and she listened to you, and she's going to college now.
Oh, it's
And
amazing.
and that just changes your life. So if I can do that, that's what's next for me. I still am chairman of a company in Boston. I have 3 or 4 consulting contracts. I still love the stock market because I think it's a fascinating intellectual challenge, and it makes you an interesting person. I have at least 4 groups of people that basically talk at least between once a week and once a month, discussing the market and the world. So I want to keep myself, alert and so on. And I still play golf. So there's a lot of things. What's next? My wife's hoping I'm going to slow down. She's in trouble.
We'll definitely join you for a round of golf, Ed. We're here with author Ed Hajim on the Mike Wagner Show with On the Road Less Travel, Unlikely Journey from the Orphanage to a Boardroom. And, just a couple of things. You've been great. We'd love to have you back. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
What's my biggest influence in what?
I'm sorry. Who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. It's, again, like me, it's been a combination. I take different things from different people. Pete Peterson, who was the chairman of board of Lehman Brothers, gave me a lot of what I call fairness. He was a very fair man. Ace Greenberg was the chairman of board of Bear Stearns, was the most generous man. Jimmy Dimon is the most well-rounded person I've ever come across. So I haven't found any flaws with Jamie yet. So, those are the kinds of people who influence me. But the biggest influence has basically been my wife. I mean, she's there all the time, and she brings so much to the party that I don't have. She has great sense for people. She had a great sense for situations. I mean, when I was leaving Lehman Brothers, she said, leave Lehman Brothers, get out of there. I was hanging on because it was a great place. I mean, had a beautiful office. I'd created a nice business, but she didn't like the people there, and she thought it was a bad place for me. And she's been fabulous in building our homes. We've had really very good luck in real estate. We live in 2 or 3 wonderful places right now.
Wow.
And that's, I give her that credit. So she's had the biggest influence. But there have been people in my life, and I can go back to the head of the last orphanage, who was a man who desperately tried to help me. And that point in time, I was so independent. But he did finally get through to me. He really wanted me to be successful. So there's been, along the way, I've had a lot of influence. You say, well, I did it all by myself. I didn't. It took more than a village. There was a professor, my first year at college, when I was having an enormously rough time, that basically stayed with me the whole 4 years and counseled me all the way through. Wonderful man, Oscar Miner, mechanical engineering professor. So I would say that I can't point to any one person who really influenced me overall. There have been a lot of people that have, and in different arenas. Because when you move for different arena, you want a different influencer. Because people really, people are very different in different arenas. The president of a university has very different characteristics, even though they think they're the same than a CEO of a corporation. Even a CEO of a corporation in different industries have different mentalities.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and of course,
I'm sorry, I can't answer that as best you'd like to.
And of course, a collaboration does help. I think you collaborate very well. I got to say that. So
you're easy to collaborate with, Mike.
Yeah, a good collaborative answer. I like that. Thanks. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Well, I'd say communicate with yourself and write down really what you want to do and where you want to go. Because one of the problems with people is thinking is very fuzzy, talk is even fuzzy. When you start writing down and looking at it and saying, is this realistic? Can I do this? Do I want to do this? Is it doable? And as I go forward, I can look back at what I've written down. I have piles of yellow pads on my plans and say, it's not possible. Like, for example, I wrote down my freshman year, I think I want to be a physicist. So I took a advanced physics course, and I flunked it. It's very perfect. Backed off, moved in a different direction. But I think I try to write down things and also be optimistic. This is one of the most exciting periods of history. No one can tell you, we got a war, we got the pandemic, we got inflation, but there are so many things you can do today and so many advances. I mean, medical science is going to go, it's gone crazy, but it's going to go even further. I'm reading a book now on medicine where, we're going to be able to tell the body to do certain things. And you'll not cure yourself, but a lot of the things can be done with non-intervention. There's a whole area there. We're going to have to cure neurological diseases. I mean, curing Alzheimer's, it's going to be but we'll get it done in our era. So I just say, be optimistic. Probably that's one thing. Be optimistic and just find your passion and go after it. Do it.
And certainly we'll do so. I've been writing it down as we speak too. So I've been doing that. So we're here with author Ed Hajim of the book, on the road less troubled, unlikely journey from the orphanage to the boardroom on the Mike Wagner Show. Ed, a very big thank you for your time. I learned a lot from you. You're absolutely terrific. Looking forward to having you again soon. Make sure you keep us up to date, keep in touch. Love having you back. And once again, tell us about your upcoming projects. What's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book?
Yep. www.edhajim, the only Ed Hajim in the world.com. His website is pretty full. My publicist keeps pumping stuff into it. You can buy the book on Amazon or Simon & Schuster. You can look at the reviews there before you buy it so that you can see what people think about it. Thank you so much, Mike. This has been very pleasant. Terrific.
And we certainly will do so. And a big thank you for your time, Ed. You're totally amazing. Love to have you back. Looking forward to having you soon. Make sure you keep us up to date. Keep in touch. We wish you all the best. And you definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Hey, have a great evening. Take care.